Okay, Ashley, I'm going to go ahead and let you talk about the NACE career readiness competencies.
Absolutely. So as Stacey was saying, the clinics throughout the year are going to be covering various topics, and we were very intentional about the topics that we wanted to choose. NACE is a National Association of Colleges and Employers. It is an association that does great work with not only colleges, but also employers. We focus on career readiness for students just like yourself. And so there was several different research studies that were done over various years, and they continue to update this different study to be able to identify the key concepts or key competencies that employers are looking for in applicants. And so these 8 competencies you'll hear throughout the different clinics that we have throughout the year, but they're really important to bring up to your mind now, because when I'm talking to students, oftentimes the hardest thing that they are trying to work through is, what does an employer care to know about me through my cover letter, through my interview, through my resume, whatever that is. What are they looking for? Well, this study answers those 8 things that employers are looking for in qualified candidates. So we'll talk a little bit about how you'll be able to articulate and show these throughout your resume, but throughout the year, the clinics are going to be addressing each of these competencies as well.
Okay, and so again, today's clinic is going to be majority about resumes, and so let's get started. For many of you on here, you may be thinking about just the purpose of resumes in general, sort of why would you start on them now, especially if you're a first-year student or a sophomore. Maybe some of you haven't really gotten that first college opportunity, in the form of an internship, some type of research experience. And so you're just kind of wondering, why would I need to go ahead? Well, one, it's a way to go ahead and collect all of your important information. And it's important for you to remember that resumes are not one size fits all. They're going to be that document that changes over time. Eventually, many of you will probably get sort of annoyed at how often you have to look at your resume just throughout your college career, because you're thinking, okay, shouldn't I be done? But the truth is that you'll never be done editing this document, because it's going to grow and change with you sort of wherever you're at in your career right now. And so the first step in sort of beginning on your resume is recognizing where you are, whether that's early professional, mid-level, or even someone who's been in a field for a certain amount of time and is considering a big career change. And so that's sort of the first step in constructing your document, editing, whatever you're going to be doing with your resume. You just need to recognize where you're at.
When we're addressing resume review, we like to point out that there's different tiers or different levels of review. Today, during the clinic, we're going to be addressing what we like to call a tier 1 review. So this is a general cosmetic review of organization, format, how your document looks and feels. Tier 2 is what you want to make sure that you do before submitting any document for any individual opportunity. This is so important. I can't stress the importance of a tier 2 review, because in a tier 2 review, you're taking the document, how clean and concise it is, and you're actually aligning it to that particular description or that specific opportunity that you are applying for. So in this case, you will deconstruct the job description that you're applying for and aligning it very specifically, making sure the language is appropriate, reorganizing your bullet points, going very much into detail and into the specifics. We can't really do a tier 2 review without a job description. The opportunity for tier 2 is really what we can do on a one-on-one appointment. And so we'll talk later about how you can submit your resume for review and how you can do one-on-one appointments with us. But for today's purposes, we're going to go over that tier 1 cosmetic, the basics that you have to address before you can get to that very specific content alignment.
So a major important step is, don't forget to update this document. So again, like I said a few moments ago, this is something you're going to be constantly looking at, and something that's important to remember, and it will prevent you from having about 30 different versions of a document on your computer, is we always recommend our students to develop a master version of their resume. So that's where you're sort of going to put everything on there. It doesn't have to be neat or tidy, because your master version is never the document that you're going to be submitting for opportunities opportunities that you find to apply to, it's sort of that place that keeps you updated on yourself. It's sort of something your future self is going to thank you for, especially if you're a first year student. Come senior year, if you've really worked hard to update your master version, you know full well that like, okay, I remember I put that project on there from freshman year. I don't have to remember all the details now 4 years later. And so remember to update this document because it's just a way to collect your experiences and accomplishments. And it definitely prevents that recency bias coming a few years later where you're trying very hard to remember this really important opportunity from a few years ago, and you just don't remember the details enough to do them justice to sort of elaborate on your document. And so with that in mind, sort of the goal that we provided for students is to update it at least once a semester. Visit this document, get comfortable visiting it, and sort of every time something happens, anytime you're doing research with a faculty member, had an informational interview with an employer, something along those lines, put it on your master version of your resume. That way, when we do come together for that tier 2 review and sort of doing that content alignment for whatever position you may be applying for, we have everything we need to dissect from that large scale version and to tone it down into that consolidated, neat and tidy document to then submit for the opportunity. Another great reason to start early on your document is because it prompts you to think about your future. It's not just about comparing it to someone else's document. It's just about looking at what you have in the here and now and helping you identify those gaps and just the opportunities of growth. Never, base your feelings on what it is right now in this current moment, but think about, what you want it to look like in the upcoming semesters and sort of what kind of opportunities you can pursue in the meantime that'll help you develop a really good game plan for what you're going to be doing. That way, when you're going to be adding new things to it.
And I would go on to elaborate that for the career changers and mid-level career individuals that may not be looking for a career change, but maybe a leadership or going to grad school to continue your education, whatever this looks like for you individually. I'm sure you can relate that it's hard for me to remember what I had for dinner last night, let alone that leadership opportunity or that professional development opportunity, that certificate that I earned 2 years ago. So being in the habit of keeping up with your document, even after graduation, but each year just setting aside time. I try every January 1st, pulling out my document and looking up and kind of recapping what it is that I've done and accomplished over the past year. Because even if I don't plan to make a career change within the next 5 years, 6 years from now, I'm going to have to reflect on all of those items. So that reflection and that setting aside time becomes even more important as you get comfortable in your career as well. Now, one of the things that we want to talk about, and the reason why that tier 2 review, that really going into depth in that content alignment of your resume is so important, is because applicant tracking systems are often used by companies and organizations to help, quote unquote, identify the most ideal candidates or qualified candidates for opportunities. So oftentimes what we end up doing is we're having to beat these applicant tracking systems or this artificial intelligence to even be selected to be seen by a human eye. So it's important that you keep that in mind. There are some really great resources out there. JobScan and SkillSyncer are online versions where you can actually upload a version of the job description that you are applying for, and then your resume, and it'll tell you suggestions on what is and what isn't missing. It's not perfect, but it's definitely a really great tool. SkillSyncer is free for a year with a .edu email address, so that's one thing to consider. Applicant tracking systems are great for employers and for talent acquisition professionals because they're able to very quickly identify those that list the qualified or the qualifications that we're looking for on a job description and seeing what those keywords are. But again, AI or artificial intelligence is not great at reading between the lines. So if the job description or if the employer is looking at someone who is proficient in Microsoft Access, but in your document, you're saying Microsoft Suite, the AI may not pick that up. So it's really important that you spend that time to look specifically at what they're asking for and write it exactly in that manner on your document. So there are some, this is the same thing. You see this in search engine optimization. If you're in the marketing field, you've heard that term. You're using those same skills and strategies, but on your resume document.
I would echo everything that Ashley just said about that, especially emphasizing the part about really looking at the job description. Most of the stuff that's going to be in there, it isn't just for kicks. They put certain words and key buzzwords and phrases in there for a reason. And so really be looking through, don't just scroll immediately down to qualifications or if they've listed salary. Really go through the entire thing and sort of look for the types of things that you as a human being can read between the lines and look for, and just sort of helping you to know what you can include in your document, not only your resume, but also in your cover letter as well, to really elaborate on why you're going to be such a good candidate for this position. So let's talk real quickly about sort of the 4 C's of formatting, as we like to say, and it's just sort of to help you, it's to give you guidelines as you're constructing your document or editing it, in whatever place the document may be at this present time. The main things that we want to make sure of is that, one, sort of filter your document through these words and ask yourself these questions. One, is my document clear? Are the main ideas I really want the employer to know, are the experiences I want them to know about and really highlight? Is it clear? Am I making it clear what I've done and what I've accomplished on this document? Or am I being sort of vague and not really giving them much more to ask me about? 2, is the document clean? The overall formatting. So you should be able to say, an employer could easily read through this in a matter of minutes. They can tell what areas that they're going to be looking at, and it's very clean for them to go through. They don't have to stop at each section and try to figure out where the break in the sections are, or dates not anchoring the document appropriately. Just sort of those very cosmetic things that make you look at face value and say, wow, this just really doesn't look as clean as it could be. I need to fix some of the margins and clean things up. 3, being concise. So your resume is really not the place to fully elaborate in the manner in which you would through a cover letter or even verbally in an interview. It's sort of that place where you do have to be concise, and you have to, every word matters. And so it's just not the place to be spilling over into 3-line bullet points or sort of looking like it's an essay paragraph format versus bullet. And so really trying to tell how quickly an employer can sort of read through it. And then is my document being consistent? Are you adhering to the same rules throughout your entire document? If you have formatting for one section and then something completely different, or even a matter of using different fonts or sizes, and it just looks, again, it goes back to that cleanliness piece. You just need to make sure you're being consistent. That's probably just the cardinal rules of resumes and any document that you're going to be submitting for an opportunity, is to make sure you're being consistent.
When we think of bare bones, so these are the different sections or headers or that you may see in your resume. Obviously, this is going to change depending on your professional background, your goals, what you're applying for, and where you are in your career. But in general, these are some of the things that you're looking at. At the top, you want to have a header that is very clean and easy to identify your name and the contact information. Your email, we always encourage students that if you have a email address that is your student email, if that's the one that you choose to use, make sure you're using the name format, not your digit format. Your phone number, and then your full address is no longer needed. We'll talk about that, just your city, state, and zip. And then your Facebook or your LinkedIn link as well. We'll go into details about how to update those. But one thing to consider when constructing the header for your document is, in the future, this is also quite possibly the same format that you'll want to use for your cover letter. So just making sure you have all of the updated and concise contact information, where an employer can very quickly look down and find your contact information and be able to use it to contact you. And then other sections that will be very important are everything from your education, work experience, technical skills, projects, leaderships, campus involvement, honors, volunteer experience. Now, the thing is, this again will change for each individual. As you gain experiences, different experiences that you've done in the past will lose relevance and will drop off of the document that you will send. So it doesn't mean that your high school experiences didn't have incredible value, and maybe you want to bring those up as your brand stories or when discussing in an interview. But at this point, if you have other experiences, you wouldn't want to take away from the more relevant experiences that an employer is looking at. So you'll have to do some judgment and some ranking and filing and some hard cuts sometimes as to what makes the cut on your document and what is going to be left in your back pocket for your stories during other opportunities such as cover letter or your interview.
Notice that Ashley spoke about sort of phasing certain opportunities off of your current document. She didn't say, cutting it off and never mentioning again, or, on a different note, like pretending that you never even had that experience. That is not what we're trying to say at all when we do talk about sort of making your document concise and sort of pulling from that master version that we spoke of earlier. We say this in an effort to say that, like she said, sometimes as you gain more experiences, get exposed to more skills and different leadership opportunities in whatever industry you're going into, sometimes there will just be a moment where you say, well, this doesn't have as much relevancy for this specific position. But even something going all the way back to high school, if it was a really great opportunity, we're not in the business of cutting out experiences that you want to highlight to employers. So you never know. That's why we ask you to phase it back on to that large scale master version, so that one day, you never know, you could have that opportunity where it's going to come back around and say, well, I really want to talk about that opportunity, whether it's in my cover letter, in my interview. I want to draw back on that. And so never cut anything or delete it off. If you need to have like a certain color or sort of strike throughing on your master version, just to keep yourself aware of what things you're phasing off, do that, but don't cut things off, just because you never know when you may have to draw back on it in the future. So if anyone looked at that last slide and was thinking, okay, well, like Ashley said, I don't have to have all those sections, but did I have to have them in a specific order? Is there an order that an employer expects? That is all about, what goes where. That's certainly up to an employer, what they're looking for. And again, that's why it's so important to study your position descriptions. If you have a position description that's talking a lot about teamwork, and they're just really talking about how much their company values this, and just A, B, and C, what type of teammate are you, things like that, you probably want to, if you had a project section where you're constantly working with your peers on different projects, or any type of opportunity in which you were really playing a key part on a team, whether it was in a leadership capacity or not, you're probably going to want to put that section towards the top of your resume, because again, we're focusing on what points you want to highlight for that specific employer. That way, as they're thumbing through your document, they do not have to go very far to find what they're looking for and what they already communicated on the position description. So keep that in mind as you're phrasing things. Never worry about, okay, well, I put that section up there, but that just doesn't seem as relevant to this. So again, like Ashley said, it's very much a judgment call, but just making sure that it aligns with the position that you're applying for, and just making sure that most important information to that employer is going to be listed pretty high up on the document, so that they don't have to look very far. And also making sure in your experiences, just those tiny format things, like making sure your most recent is at the top and then you work backwards.
Another really great example of that is if you're an early professional right out or still within undergrad or graduate school, then at that point, your education may be the most relevant to what it is that you're applying for. But as you get into your professional career and you get additional work experience under your belt, maybe your education becomes less relevant. It is completely appropriate for that education section to fall at the bottom of your page and no longer be at the top. So that's another really great example of how things will shift and change over time. So anatomy of a bullet point, this is just really talking about what do you want covered within your bullets. Now, I do want to point out, like Stacy mentioned earlier, if you're looking at your document and you are seeing bulk text or paragraphs, that's absolutely fine. That's how I start mine. What I would then challenge you to do is read through those paragraphs and how you describe the position and what you did and what you accomplished. Highlight the verbs, and there you go. You have the start of your bullet points, and you'll break those out into bullet points. When you are constructing your bullets, you want to make sure that you are being consistent again, whether you're using complete sentences or actual bullet points. You just want to make sure that you're being consistent, either always or never using punctuation. If you are doing using complete sentences, that is fine, but making sure that you're being concise in those sentences and not being very wordy with that, to where you have, like Stacey said earlier, that 3-line bullet point and taking away and really hiding the most important part of what you accomplished. This is very important. Oftentimes when we are thinking about our resume, individuals start with the job duties. We need to go 2 or 3 steps beyond that and frame those duties as the accomplishment in which you did or provided to the employer. So instead of manage social media, that's probably the duty that you saw in your position description. But what did you accomplish by doing that? Did you increase the user engagement by a certain percentage? It's the same thing. You accomplish the same thing with both of these, but the way that you frame it is very, very important. Using that measurable analysis and being able to tell an employer how you improve something by a certain percentage, or how many events, if you supervise a team, how many specific team members did you supervise? If you say supervise a team to do such and such, well, a team of 1 person and a team of 30 people are 2 different things. So just being very specific. When you are constructing these bullet points, you also want to make sure that you're being consistent in the verb tense and punctuation that you're using. So the beginning of each of your bullet points should start as a strong action verb. If every one of your bullet points starts with collaborated or watched or these weaker verbs, then there are some really great resources on the career.mercer.edu website where you can actually, that's okay if that's your first draft, but then go back and look at those resources to help elevate those verbs. Again, you want to be consistent with your tense. So if your position is present, then it is completely appropriate to use present tense. But for positions or opportunities that were done in the past, then you should be using past tense. You want to avoid active language such as collaborating or operating. You want to use past or present tense, and making sure that you are not being redundant, but being relevant. So know exactly what you need to say and saying it in that concise way. So know how many points are necessary and what can be left out. Strong and diverse action verbs, again, that career.mercer.edu website, and I believe we put it in the chat, is a really great resource to help you take those verbs and help elevate them to the next level.
So next we're going to talk about some common mistakes to avoid when constructing or editing your document. There are a lot of things that should go on this document, but there are also some things that probably shouldn't. And so a few things that we've taken out after looking at a lot of different resumes is making sure you don't have any personally identifiable information on here. This is not the document to include any banking information or a social security number. So just make sure you're not putting anything like that on there. Again, too, we still find that a lot of people, it's not commonplace to put your full address on your document anymore. That's why we've consolidated to people most of the time just put city, state. And so it's not, it's no longer necessary to put that full address on there. High school experiences, as we've already talked about, there are exceptions to this rule. And really the goal in even saying that is just to make sure that we are creating goals for opportunities that you want to have in college, outside of college, post-graduation, and just developing those new and more recent experiences. That way, even though, yes, there are some ones from high school that you may still want to draw back on, but we'll help you figure out sort of, can I phase it off for this opportunity, or what's going to be best? Also, including GPAs under a certain number. For the most part, I think we've decided that including anything under a 3.0 is not necessary, but also paying attention to, again, that position description and whether an employer is actually asking for it helps you to sort of determine, do I really need this on here? What's my why for putting this number on the page, and always knowing why you're taking the specific actions that you are with your document. Also making sure that you're saving your document in the appropriate format. For the most part, we do recommend doing it as a PDF, and paying attention to what name you save your document under is important as well. You'd be surprised how many people still try to submit their resumes to employers as maybe it's a pet name, or maybe it's some kind of 2018 resume version 30, something like that. You just never know what version people are working on and what they may save it as on their computer. But always make sure that you probably go with the rule of thumb of having just last name, first name, and then maybe even the job title that you're applying for would be a good thing too. So just pay attention to those small details because they can make a big difference. And then the two things that we really want to highlight is common mistakes to avoid is inconsistent formatting. Again, I go back to the 4 C's. Being consistent is key on this document, because you just don't want to have any reason for an employer to find your document hard to look at, or just not easy for them to sort of thumb through and see what an amazing applicant you are. And so being consistent is one of the first ways to ensure that they keep their hands on your document and put it in that yes pile. And then 2, another big one is being restricted by a template. Templates are not wrong. There are several thousand of them out there for you to find, sort of to help you get started with your document. But what we find a lot of the time is that people are using them less of guidelines and a lot more as gospel. They're treating them as though the template runs them and controls what things they're allowed to put on their resume, when it's actually the other way around. You get to control the template. And so if something doesn't suit your needs, you don't really like the way something looks, change it. Don't do it just because a template had it originally on there. I've asked several students in the past, why would you want to highlight this section for an employer? Sort of what's your why? And many have come back to say, oh, well, that was just what was on the template. And so it wasn't really even necessarily that they wanted to highlight it for the employer, but much more than that it was just on a document. So feel free to change that, because it's all up to you. And just remembering that we want you to be proud of this document, not just the template.
Also, you may find that when submitting your resume to larger companies that use applicant tracking systems, several of those, when using templates, the way that the template saves will actually save the some of the text boxes as images, and so it makes it very hard for those applicant tracking systems to read, and sometimes it can't be read at all. So that's another reason to be very cautious about those. If you are very artistic and you want a more visually appealing, then there are other places that can live, either in the format of a portfolio or as a supplemental to your resume, but that's just something you want to be aware of when drafting your document. When I'm talking with students and they're trying to figure out, okay, but what belongs on my resume and in what format, I try to think of it as bait. Okay, so what stories make you excited to share with an employer? What experiences are you waiting for someone to ask you about because you have the best answer to it? Those are the experiences and opportunities we need to get at the top third of your page. So a few things to remember. Yes, it is recommended that if you have less than 5 years work experience, that your document be about 1 page. However, we work with some incredible students and students that have done incredible things, and some incredible alumni that are constantly doing just wonderful things. And so don't be limited by that rule. If you look at the information on your document and you say, no, this is relevant, no, they need to know this about me, then don't be limited by that 1 page rule. But you do need to be intentional about answering that question about every single item on your document before you do leak over to 2 pages. or additional pages. And the main reason for that, again, is you want to do the work for the employer. And you, like Stacy said, you want to make sure that you are not making it more difficult for them to find the information that they're looking for. Because if it's easier for them just to go to the next resume, then they will do that. So again, intentionality, with intentionality, most of these rules can be broken, but just make sure that you are asking each of those questions. Your document's never going to be perfect. It's progress, not perfection, is really my life's motto. So be thinking about that way with your document as well. And that's why it's important just to hold yourself accountable and take a look at this document, even when you're not needing to apply right now. And the thing about opinions, well, everyone has one. And so what's most important is not that I like it or that Stacy likes it or that, your parent or faculty member likes your document. At the end of the day, it's you that has to be the most proud of your document. And so that's just something we kind of want to empower you on. But at the same time, again, just make sure that you're being intentional about what it is that you're choosing and how you're choosing to display it to employers.
So all of you on the webinar today, if you're here, you definitely have are maybe not fully familiar with Handshake, but you at least know that it exists, you know what it is. And for those of you who need more information about it, know that our office does walkthroughs of the Handshake platform and how to get the most out of it with students all the time. So if you ever have any questions about the platform, please ask us. We're here to help with it. Something we always like to make sure students know is after they finish drafting their resume, finish editing it, and you're ready to start applying for things, one of the first places we encourage you to start looking for those opportunities is on Handshake. It is that premier level career platform. And currently, we always like to give sort of those updated numbers. This is actually from a few days past, so I'm sure the numbers have even changed and gone up since then. But right now, Mercer University is connected with well over 14,000 employers, and there are over 14,000 job and internship postings on the platform right now. So whenever students do come and say, well, I just haven't really been able to find anything on the platform, I'm not sure if I'm getting the most out of it, make an appointment with us and let us help you sort of figure out what your search strategies are, keywords that you can be using, and sort of what parameters to set on the platform to help you find whatever opportunity you may be looking for right now. And associated with that is we also encourage you to download the Handshake app. It's definitely, just like everything else, it's always better on the app. And so instead of having to log in on your computer and remember to register for certain things, it's sort of just that easy way to be notified. If you want to set a reminder like, hey, I was supposed to apply for that position today, it's easy to download the app and get sort of those push notifications and things like that. You can scan the QR code on that phone graphic on the slide right now to be able to take you directly to being able to download this app. And Ashley, do you have anything else to add about the app?
My only addition is whether you are, again, a mid-level career or career changer, or this is your first, Handshake is a really great resource. It's not exhaustive. Obviously, there's tons of really great resources out here, but for you to be able to see an employer on Handshake, that employer had to intentionally choose to connect with Mercer and intentionally choose to connect and send that position to Mercer. So if an employer is posting positions and active on Handshake, they clearly are aware of and are looking for Mercerians. So maybe not every single position is posted on Handshake, but that's a really great breadcrumb, if you will, to a company or organization that is looking for and interested in talent with Mercer, at Mercer, like yourself. So that's something to consider. Is don't write off Handshake. Make sure that you are using this really great tool, because anytime a faculty member, a dean, the president is talking to employers out in the community and they are interested in searching for Mercer talent, this is where we're working to get them in. So make sure that you are using that resource because they are looking for you.
Please know that you can schedule an appointment. Scheduling an appointment with our office is not just, you don't have to just have one specific reason. It doesn't just have to be about your document. It can range from a variety of services that we offer on our menu, and it's a very large range, from helping you to prep for interviews, helping you with your job search, just kind of helping you hone those strategies that you're using, platforms that you're searching on, and obviously your documents as well, not just resume, but cover letter, and everything else, from that angle. Just know that we are here for you. And so to be able to schedule an appointment with us, you do have to go through your Handshake account. So feel free to utilize the link in the slide, in an effort to do that, and make an appointment with your consultant.
And there are many great ways for you to do that. We have in person, we have virtual, we have representatives on all campuses. So just know that there are many different ways for us to serve you where you are.
And for those of you who haven't made an appointment before, just know that once you log into Handshake, you will see the button that says Mercer University Career Center. And once you click on that, you'll be able to sort of go through the next steps in creating that appointment.